I felt like I was cleaning up a mess. Not like spilled food. Not like vomit. Not even like diarrhea. The worst mess possible.
Hailey, Kifer, and Nicholas Brady were brutally shot and killed on Thanksgiving Day of 2012 in Little Falls, Minnesota. This case stands to be a moral dilemma to date. Hello and welcome back, or welcome if you're new here. This is the Prime Crime, where we discover and dissect solved and unsolved criminal cases around the world. Today's case is quite twisted and gruesome at the same time. With so many legal and moral standpoints, Byron Smith, the perpetrator of this gut-wrenching crime, still gains both hatred and sympathy from people. But before we start, we would like to send our condolences to the people affected by the heinous acts committed by this individual. Little Falls is a town located in the heart of Minnesota and on the banks of the Mississippi River. Being a small town with a population of fewer than 9,000 residents, Little Falls had little to offer to its teenagers. Hailey, Kifer, 18, and Nicholas Brady, 17, were cousins and each other's best friends. Nicholas's sister Rachel was also a close friend. The trio often drove around town listening to music and having a good time in the car that Nicholas had put together himself. Rachel describes Nicholas, or Nickel Baby as known to the family, to be full of life, always joking around, pranking people, and always seen with his $1 million smile. She recalls Hailey as being super bubbly and extroverted, someone who loved to have a conversation with absolutely anybody. Both kids seemingly had a great life laid out for them. But that was until perhaps that school year when they allegedly got a taste for drugs and eventually started stealing and breaking and entering for drug money. While these petty crimes are just as illegal as anything else, these teenagers had no idea what they were in for when they broke into 64-year-old Byron Smith's home. Byron David Smith was a 64-year-old retiree, living by himself in a relatively secluded neighborhood at the time of the shooting. He was a Vietnam veteran and had decades of experience working in the state's security. His job had a high security clearance, as he had the responsibility to ensure the safety of American embassies in countries around the world. Take note of his job profile for decades to understand his safety consciousness, which was almost too neurotic. Fast forward to 6 years after his retirement from the U.S. State Department, Byron had little to no family left and was living alone on his huge private property. Even though he didn't have any houses lining up next to his, neighbors frequently complained about his habit of shooting guns in his backyard. In the months leading up to the tragic Thanksgiving murders, Byron had his property burglarized at least half a dozen times. According to some evidence, Kifer and Brady might have been responsible for a few of those break-ins, and they were being investigated for the same at the time of the incident as well. Among the stolen items were some of Byron's prized possessions, including his father's watch, awarded to him by the states for being a prisoner of war. The total value of stolen items is estimated at around $10,000. Thrown well over the edge by the frequent break-ins, Byron started routinely wearing a holster with a loaded gun in and around his home, and had also installed surveillance cameras in hopes of some clues. Little did he know, his own security tapes would be the key evidence in his trial. The day before the murders, Nicholas, Hailey, and Rachel spent the night over at a friend's apartment. The following morning, that is the Thanksgiving day, Hailey and Nicholas left the friend's place at around 11 a.m. and had planned to later meet up at their grandmother's place for the family Thanksgiving dinner. But the duo never showed up. The family spent the rest of the night worried that the teenagers might have gotten into a car accident since it was snowing outside. As the following morning rolled around, they were out looking for Hailey and Nicholas everywhere they could, but to no avail. By afternoon, they filed a missing persons report. Around 12:35 in the same afternoon, a resident named Bill Anderson called his friend Byron Smith, and as soon as he answered, Bill could tell something awful has happened. Byron told him that he might have solved the frequent break-ins at his property, and that he might need an attorney. Notice how Byron hasn't asked for police to be sent over, and this is well over 24 hours after the kids were last seen alive. It's chilling to imagine that while Byron was on this phone call, talking calmly, not one, but two dead bodies were lying cold on a tarp in the basement of his home. Here's Byron's account of what transpired on the tragic Thanksgiving Day of 2012. According to him, he was in his house's basement, catching up on his reading when he heard a loud crashing sound. Somebody had broken his glass window and entered the house. Shortly after, Nicholas walked down the basement stairs, looking for something to steal. As Nicholas was standing on the basement stairs, Byron could make out a man's legs and torso and immediately shot him twice. He proceeded to shoot him once again, after Nicholas fell to the bottom of the stairs, clearly unarmed and posing no threat. This time Nicholas was shot in the head. An autopsy later revealed that the final bullet traveled through his finger before lodging in his skull, presumably while the 17-year-old tried to shield himself from the fatal attack. Byron then proceeded to drag Nicholas's body, along with the underlying tarp in an area out of sight, and repositioned himself on the couch, wedged between the two tall bookshelves. A few minutes later, Nicholas's elder sister, Hailey, made her way into the house, calling out his name. She too was shot by Byron, while she stood at the top of the stairs and fell to the bottom. As he proceeded to shoot her again, his gun jammed. On his audio recording of the incident, he can be heard saying,
Oh, sorry about that.
and Hailey can be heard pleading for her life. However, Byron was unfazed by the pleas and pulled out the gun he used to have, holstered around his chest at all times. He then shot at her torso multiple times with the .22 caliber gun, all while hurling abuses at her.
You'll die. Bitch. Cute. I'm sure she thought she was a real pro.
Byron then dragged Hailey on top of her cousin's lifeless body and repositioned his gun under her chin as he saw her clinging to life. He proceeded to shoot the obviously non-threatening teenager yet again. Audio and video of the events were recorded by Smith's own security system. According to him, he stayed down in his basement for the next 2 hours. Upon questioning why he didn't contact the police right away, he told the investigators that he didn't want to bother the policemen on Thanksgiving Day. Just how nice of him. Following Byron's account, Kifer and Brady's families were informed about the tragedy that struck their kids. Upon further investigation, it was discovered that Byron had bugged his entire house and had the whole massacre on tape. Reportedly, Byron had parked his vehicle a couple blocks away prior to the break-in, to lead intruders to believe that the home is vacant. Now, let's go over two terms that are going to be very frequently used in relation to this case. The first is castle doctrine, which states if an intruder enters your property without consent, and you use reasonable force to remove them, then you are not legally liable for any injury they sustain after being evicted. Since Mississippi is a castle doctrine state, the law is applicable here. And this is exactly what Byron claimed he practiced. The other very important term here is lying in wait, which means holding oneself in a concealed position to watch and wait for a victim for the purpose of making an unexpected attack and murdering or inflicting bodily injury on the victim. The case sparked debate over the castle doctrine, which allows a homeowner to defend his home with lethal force. The prosecution alleged that Smith's actions showed aspects of premeditation, demonstrated by the laid-out tarp and parking of his vehicle several blocks away. He also used excessive force in relation to the threat. The tape that he had set up, seemingly to prove his innocence, actually ended up being a damning piece of evidence in his arrest. On the tape, he can be heard practicing what he would say to his lawyer in his defense.
I was doing my civic duty. Because the law enforcement system couldn't handle it, and I had to do it. I had to do it. They weren't human. I don't see them as human. I see them as vermin. This bitch was going to go through her life spoiling things for other people, thieving, robbing, drug use. It's all fun, cool, exciting, and highly profitable until somebody kills you.
With a lengthy legal battle over the extent of castle doctrine in the state of Mississippi, Byron was eventually convicted of 2 counts of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison without any possibility of parole. Byron has since then filed for appeals for his release, but to no avail. He is still serving his sentence behind the bars. What are your thoughts on this case? Was Byron a federal hero or a cold-blooded murderer? Comment down below and let us know. Make sure you subscribe to the channel for your daily dose of solved and unsolved criminal cases. Also, please like the video and let YouTube know you're enjoying what you're watching.